Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon. Good evening, wherever you're from wherever you're joining us. Welcome to the third edition of the ADR Wellbeing Toolbox. For those of you who haven't joined us before, the ADR Wellbeing Toolbox is a co-creation of ARBalance, Real and VIAC, and it aims at starting the conversation about well-being and providing ADR lawyers and users with a toolbox to take care of themselves as opposed to arbitration. It is a series of free webinars that you can join anonymously. They'll be recorded for those who can't join, make themselves available. And we will have experts on a rolling basis addressing everything around the topic of well-being. And we decided to make a special edition of the ADR Wellbeing Toolbox on International Women's Day. And in my view, this initiative has not come a minute too soon. Now, before I hand over to Mandy, I want to speak about something that shocked and disturbed me this week, and I'm sure many of you will share my thoughts on this. When I read about the death of Vanessa Ford, an equity partner in a big London law firm, and I just want to take a minute to speak about that and to highlight the importance of this for the ADR Wellbeing Toolbox. So Vanessa Ford, for those of you who maybe didn't follow it, was said to have suffered an acute mental health crisis before her death. She'd been working 18-hour days, weekends and holidays. She was described as a perfectionist, the perfect lawyer, the perfect wife, the perfect mother. She apparently always worked hard to satisfy all of her responsibilities while alluding to the heartbreaking guilt that this could cause at times. The ADR realm is full of perfectionists and high performers. I'm sure there are many of them on the call here today. These are the very people that put enormous amounts of pressure on themselves to carry on, to not complain, to suck it up. And often these problems do not surface until they resign or until they are completely burned out, or even worse, until they're no longer with us, like in the case of Vanessa Ford. So working long hours, not taking time at the weekend to recuperate, sacrifice are the norm. It is accepted, but it shouldn't be acceptable. And one study that I read this week that was done in the UK last year found that that stigma is the main obstacle preventing improvements in mental health and well-being among lawyers. And the report concluded that it is very hard for a legal professional to seek help if they are struggling for fear of being perceived as weak or not good enough, so people carry on in silence. I truly hope with our ADR Wellbeing Toolbox that we will be able to provide a space where we can have a conversation about mental health and well-being. And on that note, on a positive note, happy International Women's Day to each and every one of you. This year's theme is Inspire Inclusion. So this means when women are not present, we must ask, if not, why not? When women are discriminated against, we must call out poor practice. When the treatment of women is not equitable, we must take action, and we must do this each and every time. So now, without further ado, I pass on to the wonderful Amanda Lee, my co-creator here at the ADR Wellbeing Toolbox, and I believe you are in for a treat. Over to you, Mandy.
Thank you very much. Well, today is International Women's Day. It's the day when we are all encouraged to pause and take a moment to celebrate the women in our lives. It's the day when we all get to be as sparkly as my blazer. And each year we identify two themes. Niamh already mentioned that today we're going to be focusing on inspiring inclusion. But it's also worth taking a moment to recognize the theme identified by the United Nations, which is to invest in women and accelerate progress. Now, there are a great many ways in which we can invest in women in ADR in general, and women in arbitration in particular. We can invest our time in mentoring and sponsoring women at all stages of their careers. We can sign the Equal Representation in Arbitration Pledge and its sister pledges. And frankly, if you haven't signed those yet, just head off and do so now. We'll wait, I promise, it's fine. We can educate ourselves about talented arbitrators and mediators who just happen to be female. We can shortlist and nominate women to sit as arbitrators, and we can appoint women as mediators. We can ensure that we have meaningful female representation when organizing events, and we can remember that women are diverse in an intersectional way, and we can refrain from treating them as an homogeneous group when it comes to considering how diverse shortlists, long lists, teams, and panels really are. Basically, we can use our platforms and our voices and our time to celebrate and promote our female peers. And all of these things help us to accelerate progress towards gender parity. Today, though, let's spend a couple of minutes thinking about how we can invest in one area in particular, the well-being of women. Now, those who've seen Pixar's The Incredibles may remember Helen Parr, otherwise known as Elastigirl or Mrs. Incredible. Helen's superpower enables her to stretch any part of her body up to 300 feet and to be no more than 1 millimeter thick. If women in arbitration were to have a patron saint or a representative superhero, Elastigirl would be a really good candidate. And in many ways, Helen is a visual representation of what it often feels like to be a woman working in ADR and arbitration. We find ourselves being pulled in all directions as we strive to do a good job for our clients, be team players, engage in business development, write articles, attend networking events, serve on committees, mentor, participate in initiatives designed to promote diversity, speak at conferences, stay up to date with the latest developments in our fields, teach and serve as neutrals. I get tired just saying that entire paragraph. Now, on top of that, we're also expected to find time to exercise, eat well, spend time with our families and friends. Do you remember those? Meet our caring responsibilities, have hobbies, and maintain robust mental health. Don't forget that. That's very important. Is it any wonder that many of us in arbitration are sometimes accused of stretching ourselves just a little bit too thin? Now, Elastigirl's superpower gives her the ability to do that, apparently without damage. However, most of us, when we are stretched beyond breaking point, are likely to do just that. We break. And so, to enable women to progress, more investment is needed, not just in women in general, but specifically in our well-being. Thank you. We're going to be exploring what well-being means shortly. But when it comes to investment in it, let me get started with 3 quick suggestions. First, getting talented female colleagues into ADR roles is the beginning of the journey, not the destination. Employers must provide opportunities for women to grow and develop in ADR roles. Every woman is different. We all have different goals, dreams, and aspirations. By understanding and respecting the values of women in our teams, we can create more engaging and more inspiring work environments. Basically, help women to find their purpose in ADR because, as they say in Avenue Q, which is a delightful musical involving puppets, purpose keeps you going strong like a car with a full tank of gas. Anyone who knows that musical will be really surprised that I didn't swear when I quoted from that. A fulfilling career in ADR is the goal, so invest the time and resources required to help women achieve it by providing ongoing opportunities to learn, grow, and develop. Second, it's important to recognize that connection is a basic human need. Barbra Streisand reminded us in lyrical form that people who need people are the luckiest people in the world. We are social animals. We need people to support us, listen to us, celebrate us, share ideas with us, encourage us to grow, mentor, and sponsor us. By fostering environments in which women can connect and build strong networks in arbitration and beyond, we give them the soil, the fertilizer to engage in meaningful growth. Connections matter, and it's difficult to build strong connections when we're too tired to network, feel forced to attend events that don't suit our personalities, or are conflicted about reaching out for help. When we're struggling, it's easy to feel alone. Fostering connection can help. And third, stakeholders need to invest in management training. Many professionals are, frankly, bad people managers, and in many cases, bad project managers. They're ill-equipped to manage their own time, let alone that of their teams. Significant pressure is put on team members who fail to balance competing priorities and allow their lack of management skills to put unnecessary pressure on their colleagues, many of whom are, of course, invariably women. So by investing in the development of managerial skills at all levels, stakeholders will not only end up with colleagues who can better manage their own workloads and therefore better manage their own well-being, they'll also end up with happier, healthier team members. And after all, one person's inability to manage their time invariably has a knock-on effect on the rest of the team. I will close today by wishing all of you, my fellow Elastigirls of arbitration, a happy International Women's Day. Although we may sometimes be stretched thin, at least we can say we have truly earned the name Ms. Incredible. And so I will now turn the floor over to the ADR Wellbeing Toolkit's very own Mr. Incredible, the one and only Kabir Duggal.
Thank you so much, Mandy, and to everybody present. Just wanted to take a moment and wish you all a very, very, very happy Women's Day. This is a special moment, and I think I speak on behalf of everybody that we hope this doesn't just remain a day. This remains something that we celebrate throughout the year. The joke often by men, okay, we'll give one day to women and the rest of the year is for us. I think we need to change our thinking a little bit. As both the fantastic speakers so far have mentioned, we have two themes for this year. One, women inspire inclusion. And we'll spend a few minutes just talking about what do we mean by inclusion? How is it different from diversity, equity, and belonging? I think I'm going to restrict my role to that. Today is my opportunity to listen from our amazing speakers. So that's one theme. And the other theme, invest in women, accelerate progress. This is the theme from the UN. It is something that the UN has pretty repeatedly highlighted in the past, that if you really want to see systemic change, the way to do that is to invest in women. Coming to the theme of inclusion, Werner Myers put forth this really, really, I think, intelligent way for us to think about these different terminologies in the DEI space. And it gives us a helpful framework as we analyze these topics. So what is diversity? How is it different from inclusion, equity, and belonging? And she gives us this beautiful dance analogy, telling us diversity is being asked to the dance. Inclusion is being asked to dance. Equity is how much space you get on the dance floor, and belonging is who gets to choose the music. Now, for a moment, I just ask you to replace dance with arbitrator appointments, and this will suddenly make a lot of sense. And I know we're often talking about arbitrator appointments. Just to be fully clear, that is the end process. To get an arbitrator appointment, you need to have gotten an opportunity to enter the profession. You need to have gotten an opportunity to progress up the ladder without finding the glass ceiling hitting your head, which is sadly a reality that most women professionals in particular face. You need to have gotten opportunities to grow, progress, and build your profile, often a prerequisite to be a successful arbitrator, and then you become an arbitrator. So while I'm talking about the end, I don't want to lose sight of the fact that we need inclusion at every level. But taking her analogy just for the moment to arbitrator appointments, diversity is getting on arbitrator lists. Inclusion is being asked to serve as an arbitrator. Equity is actually treating your women arbitrator as competent arbitrators whose voice matters. And belonging is really allowing women arbitrators to conduct the proceedings in the way they deem appropriate. I think this is a good, helpful framework for us to think about it. Getting on lists, I think, is where we are seeing the most progress. When it comes to gender issues, I think there is a concerted effort by institutions to put women on lists and to try and propose the name of women. Is that good? Of course. But we're still really at stage one. We need to come to a stage where the fact that women are going to be on panels is taken for granted. I still think we're still asking people, before you appoint, pause. And why are we doing that? Because most people don't even think of women. Hopefully we can make some progress. This is consistent with the theme. I'll just put the theme back for you: inspire inclusion. And on that note, I wish you all a very, very wonderful International Women's Day. It is my job today to sit and listen to everybody speak, and that is exactly what I'm going to do. But don't want to lose sight of this beautiful moment to celebrate this day with all of us together. I see Mandy dancing. With that, please let me stop, and we will carry on with our proceedings. So, out from the male speaker.
Thank you, Kabir. Thank you for this very nice introduction into the topic. And of course, thank you for being here. As always, your presence is just a real treat. It is also my pleasure to be here today and to hold space for our two fantastic speakers, Amy and Patrizia. So first, let me shortly introduce the two speakers. Amy Rowse is a partner in the litigation and arbitration team at Kudun and Partners and heads their Japan practice. She has over 17 years of experience advising and representing clients through Asia on complex commercial litigation, international arbitrations, and fraud investigations. She has advised clients across a wide range of industries and represented them in arbitrations under various arbitration rules. She gained experience working in Hong Kong, Tokyo, and Bangkok, and is a Hong Kong qualified lawyer and accredited mediator. She is on the panel of arbitrators for Thailand Arbitration Center, Hong Kong International Arbitration Center, and EBRAM. Between 2018 and 2022, Amy took a break from her legal career to complete her master's in counseling and worked as a mental health counselor to support adults, adolescents, and children with their mental well-being. Amy, welcome. And our second speaker today is Patrizia Netal. She's a co-founder and partner at the Austrian law firm KNOETZL, and she serves as the VIAC vice president. Patrizia practices both as counsel and arbitrator and has extensive experience in institutional and ad hoc arbitration proceedings under various arbitration rules. Her core practice is international commercial arbitration, focusing on construction and engineering, M&A projects, aviation, distribution, and international sales disputes. Patrizia is the co-director of the William C. Wyss International Commercial Arbitration Moot, and she's also an Austria Steering Committee member of the Pledge for Equal Representation in Arbitration, the ARA Pledge, and a former co-chair of Association of Young Austrian Arbitration Practitioners. Patrizia, welcome.
Welcome.
So very, very, very happy for both of you to be here. So in today's conversation with Patrizia and Amy, we will share perspectives on a definition of well-being, so what well-being actually is, and how cultural aspects are very important here. Together, we will explore the challenges that young female professionals encounter. We will also discuss practical strategies for fostering well-being in professional life. We will examine the concept of relevance and of belonging, and we will also look into the personal experiences that led Patrizia and Amy to prioritize well-being. So without further ado, Amy, may we start? What is your definition of well-being, and how and why cultural aspects are important here?
Yes, thank you, Emma. And I just want to take a moment to thank ARBalance and VIAC for inviting me to this fireside chat. I've been excited for days, so I'm glad that it's finally here, and very honored to be here to share my thoughts. So for me, the definition of well-being is a sort of state of feeling happy and healthy. That's a very broad general description, but I think that there's a real subjective element to the definition of well-being. You know, well-being can be different for different people, and I think it's very culturally specific as well. So in the Asian context, when people talk about well-being, they tend to think about their physical health, right? That's the first thing they think of, you know, whether they're physically healthy. They also think about happiness with success. So we just last month celebrated Chinese New Year or Lunar New Year. And if you're familiar with this festival, it's all about prosperity and success and earning money and profit. So in the Asian context, well-being is actually related to success and, you know, having a good job and being able to provide for your parents. So that's very interesting because I think maybe that's not exactly what you might think of well-being in a non-Asian context. But in recent years, in Asia, there has been a lot more talk about well-being, mental well-being. But I do feel that it's still a bit of a box-ticking exercise. So a lot of local companies are saying that they will look after their employees' well-being, but not actually putting any policies or actual things in place to make sure that the employees' mental well-being is really looked after. So I think that it's still in the infancy stages in terms of looking after mental well-being in Asia. And even within Asia, there are different focus. So for example, I've lived in Thailand now for 8 years. Before that, I was in Hong Kong, and before that, I was in Tokyo. And in each of these jurisdictions, you know, the focus on well-being or happiness is very different. In Thailand, they really focus on relationship. It's a very non-confrontational jurisdiction. So people don't want to be involved in conflict, or they don't want to confront people with problems. Whereas in Hong Kong, it's a very different story. People are looking after themselves because, you know, success is important, time is money. So even within the Asian context, I think the definition of well-being is very different.
I see. Yeah, it will be. It's a very interesting aspect. And how, Patrizia, in your view, how do we Europeans see this topic? What is our definition of well-being?
Well, I think well-being, physical and mental health belong both to the essence of well-being, and your mental health affects your physical capacity and vice versa, and both are closely intertwined. And our generation, and I'm speaking now with my European or Austrian background, is probably the first that considers well-being as an important part of our lifestyle. The younger generation, probably even more, they have an even stronger focus on looking for well-being in employment and not treating it as a matter of private life only. And the older generation, when I started my career, took a more similar approach as described by Amy. And in our profession, well-being was treated as a sign of being a successful, wealthy lawyer. And the lawyer's profession might still have the attribute of success more attached to happiness than mental health. We are judging ourselves each day on our performance, which is in law firms to a significant extent based on the number of billable hours and not so much on other achievements. I mean, I see a change here, but I think still a lot of judgment is based on what we can actually achieve in commercial terms.
And I hear you mention the younger generations. as the Wismut co-director, what do you observe that younger generations struggle with while entering the ADR community? I hear the change of values that you've mentioned, but what are the particular challenges that you observe?
I mean, in my capacity as Wismut director, I see students coming from various cultures and approximately 90 different jurisdictions. Participation in the WIS and its concept of being a competition let you reasonably assume that those students are willing to work hard for their achievements. But the challenges they are facing are very much varying and depend on their environment. And I can give you some extreme examples when you ask me about their personal struggles. For example, in 2017, Afghanistan Wismut students on their way to practice rounds missed a suicide bomb by an inch. Their car was totaled. They immediately organized another car, drove to a safe place in the forest where they conducted their practice rounds. In 2018, Iraq students had to hide during their Wismut preparations in each other's homes to avoid being kidnapped amidst the protests and revolution. They worked under flashlights out of old books because the internet was not working anymore. In 2021, Malaysian students had to struggle to find a way to participate in the middle of a national coup. And in 2022, Russia started its war against Ukraine shortly before the oral round started in Vienna. And there were many initiatives that tried to get the students out of the country successfully and helped them to participate in the Wismut. And this list now that I of different environments that I share with you is not exhaustive. Thinking of Iran and Afghanistan and the current problems, in particular, female students have and are facing to achieve a good educational standard. Yeah, unfortunately, this list will not end. Yeah, and all of these students didn't give up their participation in the mood, despite safety concerns, financial concerns. So well-being has certainly a different meaning for those young people striving for education and a professional career than it has for students in a safe environment. And when you ask me about young female professionals entering the ADR community, I think although there is more awareness of inappropriate contact, it's still perceptible. Yeah, and a lot depends on the law firm culture, and I believe a lot depends on the share of female lawyers at the equity and management level. So gender diversity at every level of seniority in law firms certainly helps younger female colleagues to enjoy a healthy working environment when they are accessing the ADR world.
Oh, it was horrible to hear, and it's very easy to kind of simply forget about this experience that people are having across the world just because we are not a part of them. And these people are part of our community, of the ADR community. So thank you for sharing that. When we are talking about well-being of the ADR community, I guess we need to start somewhere, right? And before we start changing the whole system, what we can change is ourselves, how we practice. And Patrizia, how do you facilitate well-being in your own life? Do you have any tips on how to balance a successful career on the one hand and at the same time do not forget about well-being?
I mean, I spend so many hours in my work that well-being is also important part of my working environment. Yeah, and I love my job. I like to spend hours on my job. Yeah. But I think what really helps me personal is that I do on, and that is something I think that gets easier if you get older. Yeah, that you do not consider or you so much of your time thinking of what other think of you. Yeah. You rather concentrate of what you like, your actual work, and aim for doing a good job. But I'm spending less time with how I'm perceived by others and if my achievements are equally acknowledged and recognized by others. I think that is that can be sometimes quite demanding. Yeah, if you continue doing so. I'm rather tend now at the end of my day to focus on what I did or what made me happy the day. Yeah, try to give a positive drive to my mind and not to focus on, oh my God, what could I have done better? Yeah, and I think these are little minor things, but they affect your mind in a positive sense.
Most definitely. And I have to disagree. These are not minor things. I mean, going from the perspective of being super absorbed by what others are thinking about us to moving into the direction, okay, I'm doing my work, I'm excellent at it, I don't care basically about other stuff. This is why I'm here and I love doing this. So this is a big transition already. So just it's very interesting to hear about it. Was there a particular moment in your life where you made this switch, or was it simply by getting more experienced in the profession?
I mean, more confidence helps, of course, yeah,
Mm.
in what you're doing. But I think I can't tell you whether there was a certain point in my life, yeah, that helped me to make that switch. But I think it just happened that I consciously thought, why do I waste too much time of trying to be perceived as a good person? Yeah,
Mm.
it actually, I realized at a certain point that I concentrate on what I really do and I concentrate on the actual task in front of me. And if I do that, it normally works out pretty well.
That sounds fantastic. And also on the good girl concept, you reminded me now, because women, especially women, we are too much engaged into the how we are perceived, and as we have to be the good girls, right? But then to make the switch and to be an excellent woman and an excellent professional, that's also one big important step. What about you, Imi? How do you practice well-being in your life?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to pick up on what Patrizia just shared as well. I agree that I think our definition of well-being changes over time. And for me, that's because well-being is tied in very closely to what our values are. So depending on what our values are in our stages of life, that changes our priorities as well. And when we talk about work-life balance, I don't think it's a one size fits all. I think that well-being or work-life balance is subjective and it depends on where you are in your stage of life. And are you single? Do you have a family? Are you an associate? Are you a partner? It changes over time as well. So I think for me that what facilitates well-being is knowing what our values are and really reflecting on what is important in your life and then making sure that your career and your work is aligned with those values. Um, and just to pick up on one more thing about being the good girl or excellent mother, excellent partner, we often, I think, put too much pressure on ourselves to be perfect, and I think that really hinders, of course, our well-being, but it also leads to perfectionism and what I think many of you are familiar with, this concept of imposter syndrome. So what Patrizia said earlier about getting to a point where you don't really care about other people's perception of you, I think that's good, because part of the problem with imposter syndrome is caused by comparing yourself to others, right?
Mm.
And this then also means maybe being more mindful of when you're comparing yourself to others, including your usage of social media, because social media is the best place to compare yourselves to others. And so, just making sure that you're not feeding that imposter syndrome or perfectionism by comparing yourself to others, and moving more towards, where Patrizia and I guess to some extent myself have landed, which is, just focusing on yourself and doing the best that you can do, I think will really help with your well-being.
Mm, mm. Thank you for this. And I hear you mentioned values, how values are an important factor that are determining our well-being, and also in our professional and in our personal life. Do you have an example how a core value of a person can influence their professional and their personal life? And one more question, is there such thing as a bad value and a good value?
I don't think taking your second question first, I don't think there is such a thing as a bad value, unless it's an extreme value, of course, and unless it's harmful to yourself and to others, right? And everybody's values are different. So when I talk about values, it's really broad and wide ranging, because values can include your work, of course, but family, or your relationships, your marriage. It could be parenting if you have children. Your value may be rooted in your health, right? Health could be very important to you. So it's very wide ranging, but it's a subjective thing. So I think it's important for people to take a step back and really think about what your values are, because that could really help prioritize what you want to do, and focus on the areas where you want to align your work with your values.
Probably this alignment of values with what we do at our professional environment and how we are as a person in our personal environment, this is a part of well-being, right? If there is no disconnection between the two, this is what contributes to our well-being.
Yes, and I think when there is a disconnection, that's where we fall into the anxiety trap or depression, and can cause a lot of stress when there's misalignment.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of conversation, and also there's many projects, many initiatives that are focusing on support for female practitioners. Yet it seems that we are not quite there yet. Patrizia, do you think it's still necessary to provide support specifically tailored to female practitioners if we are considering the current balance of women in the legal profession?
Yes, definitely. I do. In Austria, for example, we lose a lot of female practitioners after the bar exam. Yeah, they leave practice, start as in-house counsel, or choose a job outside law practice. Yeah, and you have a good balance at the associate level. When it comes to partnership, it's getting nowadays better at the contract partner level, but if you take a look at the company registers, you will rarely find a female equity partners in law firms, at least in Austria. That's what I can tell. And there seems to be more reluctance to value female contributions when it requires to let them in for profit share. So from a business perspective, I personally have no understanding for excluding female lawyers from equity partnership. And you help somebody for years to grow in your firm and invest. Yeah, we have heard the word today a few times. Invest in women, and then you do not allow them actually to preserve the know-how built up in your firm. And I think with this approach we actually lose money, yeah, as law firms, and partnerships can be customized, yeah, and developed to help also partners that do for family or other personal reasons do not wish to contribute 100%, yeah, of their time to partnership. And I think you just have to run the calculations rightly and explore the fair value for both sides. And it's a win-win situation. And speaking with my VIAC head, arbitral institutions, I think assume still a regulatory, sorry, regulatory role as rule providers in the ADR markets. And I think it's very important for them to help to support a balance, a better balance than we have here, because female practitioners are still not the ones that are in a majority or even in an equal share chosen for party appointments. And we are all aware that this is still actually a men's club to a significant extent. And to provide more diverse panels means to provide better solutions, decisions. Arbitral institutions can actively help with institutional appointments to increase the share of the female arbitrators and encourage the parties also to consider female candidates in their appointments. And I think here it is important that the institutional appointments encourage the increase, yeah, and organize conferences with female speakers to give them more visibility, to help them actually to get their fair share on the market, because female practitioners are users, yeah, in the market and are actually part of the business, and we should not neglect them. And I think there's still a lot to do in this field.
I hear you. I hear you. Amy, what do you think? Where do we stand?
Yeah, I would totally agree with Patrizia. And I looked up some statistics in Asia. So the two sort of major arbitral institutions here are SIAC, SIAC, Singapore International Arbitration Center, and HKIAC, Hong Kong International Arbitration Center. And for the statistics that they've published, in 2022, SIAC had 46% of female arbitrators appointed by the institution, and HKIAC had 27%. So that's 46% and 27%. In fact, HKIAC just published its figures for 2023 last year, and it's gone up to 35%, which is an encouraging increase. However, it's still, under 50%. And that's the arbitral institution's appointments. If we look at the co-arbitrators and party nominations, the figures are much less. So SIAC is 27% and HKIAC was 19%. So it shows a slow increase in institutional appointments, but women are still very much underrepresented in party and co-arbitrator nominations. So as Patrizia said, I think much more needs to be done in the nomination process. And I think one way that we can really try to ensure more appointments, especially by parties, is for us practitioners to really educate our clients about the value of diversity on tribunals. Maybe even anonymizing CVs, for example, might be an idea to try to increase the number of female arbitrators, but also encourage neutrality. And we need more men, right? We need more male allies like Kabir and male champions to really promote this process. So I think that we are seeing an increase in numbers, but not enough, and more needs to be done.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing this, also the statistics. So this is where we stand. We can see this, we are still, unfortunately, quite far from an ideal. And maybe here a question to all in our audience: what are the reasons? What do you think? What are the main reasons why we are where we are today? If you would put your comments in chat, we would be very happy to discuss it afterwards in a Q&A session. And we mentioned a couple of times today this the power that we have in terms of personal transformation and how this personal transformation may help us with general well-being, with feeling so much better than we did before. So let's move to a slightly more personal level here. Patrizia, what was your wake-up call that made you prioritize well-being more in your life?
There was no real wake-up call in my life in regard to this, but as I explained to you, my work is part of my personal well-being. Yeah, I like it as it is, and I would be unhappy not to work. Yeah, and not to do the work that I do, and to a certain healthy extent. Yeah, I need stress. Yeah, in my life and the adrenaline. I have to admit that, but that is my personal thing. Yeah. However, as many others, the speed and the volume, yeah, of things can sometimes be very, very challenging. And then I think in particular, the area that we work in, the dispute resolution field, with all the deadlines that we need to handle, life can get sometimes a bit exhausting. And I certainly am more conscious now than I was in my early years to schedule regular time for me and my family. And when you start your career and maybe even raise a family, you're very much driven by the events. So during those years, I did not have a lot of time to think about my personal well-being. Yeah, I was really driven by family commitments and my work. Yeah. But there is a point in your life where it gets easier again to gain more control over your time. And it helps me that I have invested time in building a team that helps me, yeah, to delegate tasks now. And then I'm very privileged in this sense, of course. And again, yeah, to reserve in my time schedule and block times for things that I like to do, that I need to do, be it to do a run, spend time with my kids. But it's a good time management that I learned that helped me to gain more control.
I hear you. So the right amount of stress, which can be used as a fuel, not as something that keeps us frozen or afraid or however else it might contribute to. So that would be an ideal. And then, of course, the art of delegation. I hear you, and very proper time management in terms of not forgetting about our families, not forgetting about our friends. Amy, what was your wake-up call? So through your remarkable career, you took a break from the legal profession and you ventured into the field of mental health counseling. Could you share a bit more about this experience and what led you to this decision?
Yes, thank you, Emma. So on reflection, in hindsight, I left the legal profession about 6 years ago because I was burnt out, to be honest, and I had lost sight of the values, of my own values that I was talking about earlier. So I'm a Christian and I'm a woman of faith, so I was praying a lot at the time, and I felt God's leading to pursue my passion of counseling at that time and to help others who were going through very similar problems to me. And by doing that, so I was counseling for about 2 or 3 years after I had graduated with my master's, and I was starting to sort of realize that, you know, I am becoming relevant again. I'm helping other people, and it helped me to refocus on what my values are. So that really helped me at the time to gain perspective and find purpose again. And then it really strengthened my faith as well, serving other people. And at that time, I felt called back to law and in the marketplace to raise more awareness about well-being and to really help other people who were going through similar things that I had gone through about 6 to 7 years ago. So that was my wake-up call. I did have a specific time, unlike Patrizia, where I really did have a wake-up call. And at the time, it was really difficult. But on reflection, I'm really glad that I had the opportunity to be able to step back and refocus and gain perspective on what is important to me in my life.
That sounds quite a journey. And you mentioned the sense of purpose that you now rediscovered. How would you define a purpose in general, and what is your purpose now while being back in the legal community?
So for me, purpose is, I think, what you're living for, right? What you're living for and what drives you. So what makes you want to wake up in the morning, and what is your passion? And I think that's tied into your purpose. For me personally, given that background that I just explained, I believe that my purpose is to use the gifts and talents that God has given me to give people hope and to help and serve other people.
Oh, that's beautiful. And you, Patrizia, would you like to share what is your purpose? I hear you love what you do, and I can literally feel the passion through the screen here. How would you phrase your purpose?
My purpose. I'm certainly passionate about the things that I do, and if I can convey a little bit of that passion and affection for the work we are doing, then I feel also very happy. And if I can inspire, others for also supporting the younger generation, that really makes me feel happy.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Amy, I would like to circle back to your career as a health counselor. So among others, many topics that you have probably addressed, you also explore the concept of relevance. What that actually means, and why should we pay attention to it?
I think that relevance, the question of relevance, comes back to values again. So I'm going to keep on talking about values because I do believe that it's really important. It's tied into your identity as well. So I think that when your values and your and what you're doing is aligned, then that gives you a sense of relevance as well. Once they're not aligned, right? So putting it the other way, if they're not aligned, then you start to feel a lack of relevance in what you're doing. And this is quite dangerous in my mind, because when you feel that you're not relevant, then you can start to feel hopeless. And hopelessness is very dangerous, because it could then spiral into, mental disorders like depression. So I think that the converse is true, in that if you find relevance in what you're doing because your values are aligned with what you're doing, then you will have a lot of hope, and that will help you excel in what you're doing.
There's probably no quick fixes here in terms of how can we realign the course of our life in terms of realignment with our core values and really living the core values. But what would be the start of this process? How can we start addressing this? How can we start questioning this ourselves?
Yeah, I think, as you say, it's not a quick fix. It's not something that you can just, suddenly realize. But I think a good place to start is self-examination and self-reflection. And that's really hard to do when you are, busy with your everyday things. So, I had the privilege of taking some time away to be able to reflect, but I don't think you need to have a long time away from the legal profession in order to self-reflect, right? You just need to be intentional about it, and being really carving out some time to reflect on what your values are. And you could do this over a weekend, for example, on a weekend that you're not working. And just ask yourself, what are the personal qualities that you have that you can contribute to these values that are important to you? And then once you think about your personal qualities, then think about how much time and effort are you contributing to reach or to contribute and work towards that value. So first of all, self-reflection, examination of what is important to you and assessing your values. Secondly, ask yourself what personal qualities you'd like to contribute to that value, and then thirdly, whether you're contributing enough time and effort towards your value. So I think those three questions may help you to assess your values.
Thank you for sharing these quite exact tips. I will definitely sit with myself today in the evening and try to answer those.
And maybe just may I add, because I think it's so relevant what Amy said. I mean, Amy described an internal process, how you can help yourself, and I think for your colleagues or in a firm, it's also easy to contribute to this process, and I think appreciation is important. Yeah, for what we do, we also want to be appreciated by others. Yeah, and they're small things. Yeah, you appreciate the work that is delivered by your colleague. You discuss the work in team meetings. You give feedback as an employer. Yeah, or you have regular team meetings. But I think also in your daily work, it's so easy with a tiny little recognition of something. Yeah, to show your appreciation, and that will make this person also feel more relevant. Yeah, so I think this is a nice, easy way of improvement.
Can I just add to what Patrizia said? Because you're absolutely right, Patrizia. I think when we feel valued, right? When we feel valued, we can find that sense of relevance. And I think it's important that for us looking outwards, that we're doing that for somebody else. But I would also say inward as well. It's really important, that sense of appreciation for yourself, right? And also be like, gratitude is a really powerful thing. You know what? When I have 3 children, and they often complain because 2 of them are teenagers. So if any of you have teenagers, you probably understand what I'm going through. But I often say to them, maybe on a daily basis, instead of complaining, think about what you're grateful for. Because when you're grateful, you don't have room to complain. And I think internally, personally, it's also important to remember to be grateful for yourself, but also others as well.
Most definitely. And I hear that this sense of relevance can then be also connected to the sense of belonging, because you feel recognized, for example, in your work environment, you then also get a sense of belonging. Why is the feeling of belonging, of being a part of something important, Amy?
Well, I think it's really an innate human need to be included, right? Many of you are probably familiar with FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. But it's a very real problem because we all have a sense of wanting to belong and to be included. So I think that's important. And the converse, so when we don't belong, or when we feel like we're missing out on things, then it can really trigger a lot of emotions which have negative effect, like feeling isolated or lonely or sad or angry. So it's an essential need, and that's why I think we need to talk about it.
Definitely. And in promoting this sense of belonging, Patrizia, what initiatives or maybe strategies do you believe are essential so that we are creating this environment? May that be in a broader ADR community or in a law firm?
I think it is essential, and that law firm employees are conscious to create a kind of belonging to the firm, because you invest time in your employees, money, yeah, and it would be totally detrimental to the, and I'm really talking now just with the business view, detrimental to miss the know-how you're building. Yeah, that's a value you should make sustainable for a firm, in a firm. And so I think also here it's not, it can be a little initiative that has a great effect on belonging. Yeah. I mean, in our team, we have twice a week team meetings. Yeah. So our department team sits together, exchanges views on cases, has a look. We monitor the workload of each individual. So they see we care, that they not one is heavily burdened if there is a need to distribute work amongst them. That that has an effect, and then we organize internal events. We have once a week Pilates training in our firm, other sports events that help to create the team spirit, and I think it's important. And there's not a lot of costs involved. It's so easy to do good things, without the need of huge investment, financial investment. But you just have to think about it, and provide the opportunity. And then, of course, regular individual feedbacks to team members. I think that is important, because here you can sense individual issues. Can be a personal issue that you might help, to make it easier for this person, or financial concerns that person might have, that it only is able to raise with you in an individual talk, and makes him feel more valued for the work he's delivering. So I think law firms can do a lot, and it does not necessarily take the great big initiative. And other initiatives in the ADR community, I think we are very fortunate that this community offers us so much. Be it Arbitral Women, be it the ERA Pledge. The ICC has also various task force. The Disability Task Force, for example, is a very unique one there. And I think it's important. It's important to make use of these networks, and they raise consciousness of issues that we should consider, and should better consider. They raise awareness and hopefully commit us also to a more inclusive environment.
We're back to prioritizing, right? On the level of community, on the level of a law firm, most importantly, on a personal level. Everything is reflected. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Patrizia, for both of you for this input. I feel like we could continue to talk about these topics for the whole day to really celebrate properly the International Women's Day, but I'm afraid we will slowly have to close. So back over to you, Mandy.
Thank you very much, Niamh. Well, thank you all so much for joining us this morning, this afternoon, this evening, tonight, wherever you are in the world, however you are celebrating International Women's Day. Thank you so much for choosing to come and celebrate with us and our fantastic speakers. Thank you so much to Emmy, to Patrizia, to Niamh for the excellent moderation, and of course to Niamh and to Kabir for their fabulous contributions as always. We look forward to presenting further episodes of the ADR Wellbeing Toolbox series. And for those of you who will be at this, we'll be there too. After all, everyone in the arbitration community is going to be descending on Vienna very, very soon. So please do join us if you're coaching or if you're a team member for some light stretching, breathing, and contemplation, shall we say. That will be on March 25th. So thank you very much. And we look forward to you all joining us for future International Women's Day events, if we have one next year, and for future ADR Wellbeing Toolbox events in due course. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy Women's Day.
Happy Women's Day.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all.